All this talk about money and trying to make sure that we are prepared for anything that comes our way. Well, if all of a sudden economic collapse happens, all of a sudden something really bad happens to our financial system, what are some things that we need to be watching out for and things that we should be preparing for? So today's video is going to be a good one. We're going to be talking about 7 things to watch out for if economic, financial hard times come, and how we need to make sure that we are ready for those things. So prepare now, making sure you're ready for these 7 items to be watching for, because it's gonna get serious and it's gonna get real. And it takes you being prepared. So this is gonna be a good video today, guys. And it starts right now.
This is a good day as any.
Hey guys, welcome to the Max. It is a beautiful afternoon here. We're actually getting ready for a storm. One thing I don't like is I've got all these gardens opened and we've been planting, and guess what? It's fixing to get freezing cold weather again, which is not ideal for sure. So anyways, I digress. Thank you so much for being here. If you're new to the Max, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, but let us know what you think about this video. Today's video is going to be a good one. We're going to be talking about 7 things to prepare for and to watch out for if economic, financial times and hardships come that that could be brought on by all this bank runs and bank failure. So let's jump into a list of 7 things you should be watching out for. If we see a harder economic collapse or financial collapse in our society, things that we should be looking out for. 1 would be crime. Crime will increase. Now, when I say crime, what are we talking about? Well, you're talking about theft. Theft will increase no matter what, but it seems like it will increase more when people get very desperate when it comes to money. Not only will we see theft and stealing, we will see more kidnapping, more ransom. When people get desperate, they're willing to steal and do anything to supply whatever they're needing. If it's a vice, if it's food, if it's money, whatever it may be. So if kidnapping will get them to that point, or thievery or stealing will get them to that point, it's very possible you're going to see more of that, especially if something happens when it comes to our financial security. Now, the way to prepare for that is you need to learn self-defense techniques. You need to make sure that you are aware of your surroundings, having situational awareness. It's very important to be the gray man when you're out, but if something bad really happens in America to a point of that we're worried about a financial collapse, the last thing we need to be doing is just going and running and just being very vulnerable. Try to stay in as much as you can. Number 2 is going to be people will make their voice heard. Now, here's what I mean. We're seeing major censorship on social media. So when social media becomes censored, where do people take their aggressions or their complaints? To streets. They will riot. You will have more rioting, more issues. Now, we see this in another country right now. We look in Paris, there's issues with the government, and guess what? People are rioting and going crazy. We've seen this in Sri Lanka when their financial issues happened. That's what people tend to do. And when we talk about going to the streets and protesting, that's one thing. When we talk about going to the streets and rioting, and then it kind of goes into the first point of we'll see more crime and more criminal things happening. Rioting may cause a lot of that to happen too. So at this point, you need to be stockpiled and ready for anything that comes along. We have tons of videos on food stockpile and things that you need that are non-food but are very essential items. The last thing you want to do is put yourself in that situation. If you don't have to be out, you need to bug in, sit in, and wait till things subside. It will take a while. If a financial collapse happens, like a lot of times we've seen in these other countries, for a few days or even a few weeks, you're gonna see this kind of action happen. Well, if this starts happening, if you put yourself in the midst of it, or you put yourself where you have to be vulnerable and going to get something, or you are not prepared enough, then you're putting yourself in harm's way. There's no reason for that. Lock in, bug in, have a secure home, and make sure you are ready to ride out any situation when it comes to being prepared with your food, your money, your stockpiles, because this could take a few days or even a few weeks. And number 3, this is when you had to get out. You were not prepared, and guess what happens? You will see more carjacking. This goes along with the first 2 points: riding in the streets, not having situational awareness, and thievery and stealing that's going on. Carjacking will take precedent over a lot of other forms of stealing. Why do I say that? If we're going to see people driving, what happens? We stop at red lights, we stop at crossings, we stop for people crossing in front of us, and then guess what happens? The cars are vulnerable, you're vulnerable because you're trying to drive, you're trying to keep it out of drive and put it back in park, or trying to keep it out of neutral or reverse or hitting somebody. So you are in a vulnerable state. So prepare yourself to not have to leave. Now, if you have to leave, do you have a self-defense item? Do you have a way to be very inconspicuous? Do you have a way that you don't have to go on the main routes? You don't have to hit the main highways. You don't have to go interstate. You may can hit some back roads to get where you need to go. So carjacking and issues with your cars will cause more issues for you. You will be more vulnerable, just like the first 2 points. So stay out of your cars, keep your doors locked. If you've got a garage, pull your cars in. If you have anything valuable in your cars, even if you're not leaving, get it out of your cars, because people will steal cars too. So if you've got self-defense items in your car, you have money in your car, you have any valuables in your car, get them out right now. Put them inside, keep them locked in. That way, if you see your car being carjacked, not saying you don't want to lose your car or lose your truck, but sometimes you may want to let that go if that's the situation, to save your life. So don't risk your life for it, but carjackings will become more prevalent. So be ready to, again, stay indoors and have the things that you need. If you have to get out, stay off the main drive, stay out of the main cities, try to get to safe spots. What we've seen in our cities already, we're seeing more carjackings happen. I live within a few hours of New Orleans, not too far, but it was definitely a few hours. But there's been times that we've had to go down there and all you hear is, be careful, carjackings are happening more often in the city just because there's so much stop and go traffic. So be careful of any big city that you're going to, especially if all of a sudden an economic collapse happens, that's going to be a target cars. This is a big one. We talked about the economic collapse. We've had 2 or 3 videos about the banking issues. Well, guess what? Next number would be your banks will close. They'll have holidays, they'll have closing, early closing. There'll be ways that you can't access your ATMs or your debits or even your credit cards tied to that bank. Because of the issues with the economic collapse, and we've done videos on what do you do with your money, what do you do with your cash, you need to have some liquid cash, you need to have some other assets, you need to be stockpiled with your food and water where you're not having to purchase so much. Your money will not go as far because you won't be able to use your plastic, or you won't be able to go to the bank and get money out. So you will see more bank closures, more bank failures, or halts. We've seen that with our stock market lately, the halts on the movement of the banks collapsing. It's helped banks not collapse, had other banks being bought out. So there's been a lot of transition in the last few days. We saw this in 08, 09. We see this again in some of the foreign countries that are dealing with banking issues right now. Economic collapse happens, your bank will not be accessible. Please don't go stand in a line at your bank again, because that's going to put you in a very vulnerable state. Have some cash on hand, at least 3 to 6 months at minimal. I would say 6 to 12 months is even more preferable. But at the same time, have the things that you need and the assets you need, where you're not looking to have to run to the bank and try to withdraw some money, because it will not be there. Your bank will be closed. And even though you're a friend with the banker, it ain't going to change anything. That bank's closed and you're not getting in. Number 5. What we tend to see when any kind of situation, chaos, collapse, crisis happens, people panic and they get fearful and they do stupid stuff. And then also, if you're already not in the best shape, you tend to get sick quicker, and we tend to see the run on the hospitals. And what I mean by that is we become overcrowded hospitals and medical establishments. We tend to not see a lot of extra beds. We tend to not see a lot of room in our hospitals. You see the ERs full. So learn your basic skills, having a first aid kit at home. For instance, my wife is a nurse. Not everybody can be a nurse, I understand, but it's good to maybe take some classes on CPR, on minor abrasions, how to heal those herbally, and using natural medicines. What can you do to take care of yourself with simple bandages and wound care? Having some just simple things at home is not a bad thing. We've done a whole video on how we kind of have a makeshift hospital at our house and the things that we need. It's a big first aid operation that my wife has put together, and I'll link that video below. But hospitals will become crowded. We see this with sick times, of course, like we saw the last few years. But you will see it with economic collapses, because people start panicking, anxiety happens, more theft happens, more issues happens on the roads. So therefore it opens up more situations where you're going to be vulnerable, and more people vulnerable will put more people in the hospital, more overcrowdedness. Again, if something goes wrong with you, if you can help it, don't go to the hospitals, don't go to any kind of medical establishment. Try to do these things at home, taking care of the minor issues. If you have a major issue, then of course you got to go to the hospital, but make sure you have all the preparations and ready to get there and get there as quick as possible. Again, as we talked, it's dangerous on the roads, so if you can be home, be home. Hospitals will fill up and be overcrowded. You have to be safe as you go to these places. Number 6, supplies will be down. So because of the issues with economic or financial collapse or any kind of crisis that we go through, we see the run on the grocery store. So supplies will be limited. We saw this even in the last few years, and we see this especially when there's hurricane season. They put limits on certain things, on certain food items, because everybody runs to town and kind of panic buys. Well, when we see panic buying and hoarding in a place when you were not prepared, and all of a sudden now you run to try to go do that, you won't be able to do that. You will be limited. Also, it will be putting you in danger, again, to get into somewhere to buy the goods you need with cash and making sure you have what you need. Again, it's just all bad. You go back to all these points that we've already talked about. You're putting yourself in a situation that you don't have to, especially if you can stockpile, put some things up. Supplies will be limited. If you have an area that is even worse shape, where it's in ruins, or you're seeing more financial problems, you're seeing more protests, they're going to stop interstate vehicles going in. So truckers, trains, shipping, all those things coming into that area, and that hub that gets the food where it's supposed to go. If you see more issues there, you're not going to see a lot of shipping and a lot of goods brought to that area. So it will be even more in a panic situation, because it will have less goods to give out and disperse. So not only panic buying about getting the goods there, it will all be a major issue and a major supply chain disruption. So have the things you need, because the supplies will either be limited or not get there because of all the situations that we're going through when it comes to any kind of crisis that we'll see, especially when it comes economic. Last number is people will do anything when it comes to their health and their money. Usually that's two things, and their family. I would say family in there too. But people will start being crazy. Last point is, you will see a government overreach. So you'll see more of a martial law enacted. When you see 1 through 6 happen, supply chain issues, more theft, more carjackings, more disruptions, more rioting, when all those things are happening, it's gonna be a reaction by the government to say, okay, we've got to put National Guard there, or we've got to put some kind of state enforcement there, or we've got to have martial law enacted. Then you see some gangs rise up. Then you may see local militias rise up. So now you're in a situation where it almost becomes a war zone. Now, I know people are like, oh, that's too far. That's never going to go to that point. I hope it doesn't. But because of what we live in and the way we live our life, and we're so polarized when it comes to politics and to money and to all the issues that we deal with in America, we're just like a powder keg ready to explode. So number 7 is, you have to be looking at every aspect of these people that could be martial law happening, militant law happening, or gang related activity happening. These 3 things will happen because of all the last 6 that took place. Last 6 happens. Number 7 is, people will do anything to get what they need. If that's through militias, if that's through gangs, or if that's through militant law with government overreach. You have to be prepared for that. And so wrapping all this up, it all comes back to watching our stockpile videos, understanding, get everything you need before it gets too bad. I have people that are always naysayers on our videos saying, oh, you're just a fear monger. I'm not. I'm just trying to be a realist and understand the world that we live in. We've seen banks collapse this last week. Don't be so stupid to not prepare, because if you've got all this taken care of, then you bug in, you stay safe, you lock your doors, and you're in a lot better situation than if you have to get out and be chanced in any of the 1 through 6. 1 through 6 takes place, government overreach comes in, then you have heavier rioting, and everybody on every side, from militias to gangs. Then you see martial law take place, a police state, a militant state. This is happening right now in Paris, where you have this kind of government pushed enforcement on their protesters, and there's like people getting beat in the streets. Now, I'm not saying the police are wrong or the protesters are wrong. That's not for me to decide, and that's for you to make your decision based on what's best for you. But if you're wise and you make good decisions, you'll stay away from all that and you won't be involved. You can sit at home and try to take care of your family and be prepared, because when we're prepared, 1 through 6 won't affect us, so therefore 7 won't be a problem either, because we're not putting ourselves in a vulnerable situation where we have to be out in chance having to go to the hospital, chance being carjacked, chance seeing more theft, more kidnapping, and not having the goods that we're needing. Please, 1 through 6 is bad. It will happen in the economic collapse. We've seen this in other countries. We've seen some issues here. So be ready, because more government overreach will come. You need to be prepared for that. So stockpile, put up some things, prepare, be ready, because economic collapse will take place at one point. America can't stay on this steady path of either bailing out banks and making our inflation go crazy. The stock market is so volatile, and then also we're borrowing money like crazy, and we're very close to brink of war. So all those capabilities could put us in an economic situation that we may not can overcome. So if you prepare, then you won't have to worry about this. If you don't prepare, just remember, these are some of the things that you will be facing those coming days and weeks after something happens. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you're ready for any of this, and if any of this surprises you. Maybe this is an eye-opening event to get wisdom, to show what you need to be doing to prepare. And as I'm talking, I need to prepare to get inside because it's fixing to rain on me. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you're new to the Max, go on here, press subscribe, ring the bell, and again, tell us what you think about this video. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.